Do you undermine your own feelings of security by how you talk to yourself? Do you recognize that you were born into a family that really influenced who you became? I'm going to be talking about that in this video, and I want you to really think about some of these questions. We are actually at a family reunion of my husband's siblings over this period of time, and we have done a really interesting and fun activity that I encourage you to do with your own immediate family, maybe you and your husband and your kids, or your own siblings, your parents, or your husband's siblings and parents if they're alive. It's really, really been eye-opening in a lot of ways. So I forget which one of the family members decided or thought of this, but one of the couples, and it's my husband, and he has 5 siblings and their spouses, and we're all staying in one home, Airbnb. And every morning we have spent a couple of hours actually talking about questions, answering questions. And what it started with is one of the couples, and all of us have grown children. One of the couples, their children asked them to do one of those books telling about their life, and they have certain prompts to answer. And so they brought and shared what they had answered to some of these questions. And it has been a really great prompt for us. So when they would remember something from their childhood, then the rest of the family would say, oh, well, I remember this or I remember that. And each day we talked about a different question. We talked about the relationships of the children, these siblings, to their parents, what they thought about mom, what they thought about dad, what just different relationships, how they were, and the relationships and what their memories were of their grandparents. I'm trying to think some of the questions, but they were really good. And then at the end we have talked about how did each one of the couples meet and marry. And the fact is that we've known each other for, they're siblings, so they've known each other all their lives. But we don't all know the answers to these questions. And it's really interesting. And I encourage you to talk to your own kids and talk with. I'm wishing that my grown kids could have heard all of the interaction and the stories that were told. And my husband comes from a family that was raised Christian, strong Christians, but it doesn't mean that there weren't any issues. And so it's been really, really good. I just want to encourage you to talk, communicate. And then something that comes up or has come up, and I've thought of a lot as we've talked about this, is love languages and spiritual giftings. And the when this one couple who kind of initiated all of this talked about their relationship, they talked about how they had been raised and how that played into what they decided they wanted for their marriage. And we are all different. We are all different. And there's not just one way to live, not one way to raise your children, not just one way, even though you might be all following the Bible or desiring to. So I really encourage you to communicate. And it made me very aware, again, my love language, one of I have two, but one of my love languages is words of encouragement or affirmation. And um, so talking deeply about things is meaningful to me. And when you might have something extremely profound that happened to you. And I was sharing something that happened to me that prior to when I became a Christian, but played a big impact in that. And I shared that, and one of the siblings said, I didn't know that about you. And your children probably don't know. How did you get saved? I love to ask if people come over for dinner, the first time that they come over for dinner, a family, we're all sitting around the table, and I will ask two questions and of the guests, of the parents. I will ask them, how did they get saved? If they're Christians, how did they get saved? And their children often have never heard that story, that testimony. It is really, really important for your children to know the story of how you came to know the Lord. And then, how did you two meet and end up getting married? Their children, 99% of the time, don't know that story. And that's it's also very fun because if you ask both the husband and the wife, you get two different stories, and it's very fun that way too. So these are things that you can do. This is one way to make a family reunion more meaningful. It's one way to figure out, well, if you struggle, showing hospitality to other people, just have some questions. And a question for, like I said, for a family, ask the parents that. You can ask them about where they grew up, how many siblings they have, just some basic questions. And then they often, it just gets them started talking. And they know that you're interested in them and curious about them. And then by their answers, you'll have more questions to ask. So just really, but it's been really good, really good. And everyone has a story. That's one of the things that one of my sisters-in-law said. Everyone has a story. And that is so, so true. And you've heard me say pretty much something like that, because I always say that God created you uniquely, and He is writing a story in and through your life. So it's basically the same thing, just said in a different way. And asking people to share about themselves is just a wonderful way to learn more about their story, learning more about them. And people feel loved. But it's an interesting thing. They'll go home and they'll say, oh, she was the most interesting person about you. When you just asked all kinds of questions about them and they just talked about themselves. It's a very interesting thing. So I just encourage you to reach out to people, whatever situation you're in, but also maybe you as a family could have a one night a week or one night a month where you just talk and you just have a question that each person has to answer. And maybe they need to know it ahead. If they need to be prepared, that's great too. Along those lines, one more thing I'll share with you, because I just thought it was just such a great idea. This is if you have a community, if you have an online community or you have a in-person community, maybe in your church, maybe in your homeschool group, maybe in your colleagues, whatever, maybe just in your locale, your community, you could organize this and um, one, the example was that they have once a month on the third Thursday or something like that, they have something and they have 7 minutes to share a story. And they have a theme that they give out ahead of time. And they have 7 minutes, and I think they have 7 people share. And it's at 7, and it costs $7 to come. So it's a fundraiser for the group, and then there is somebody that donates the food, and it's not a meal, but different kinds of food, and you can pay additionally for the food. So wouldn't that be a great idea? I can think of so many different ways that you could use that idea. If you are trying to learn to speak better, and you have others that are trying to learn to be speakers, this would be excellent. If you have a homeschool group and you are trying to teach your young people public speaking skills, we did that when we were homeschooling. Excellent, excellent. We didn't say 7 minutes, etc., but excellent, excellent thought. So many interesting things could come out of that, and you get to know your community. And the person who shared this said in their community, it's extremely popular because it's a great way and place to meet people in the community. So just a thought, and another way, just a lot of thoughts for you on how to get to know others, how to communicate with other people, questions to ask, and ways to get to know your family and other people better. I hope you'll try them. Let me know in the comments which idea struck a chord with you, or which one you're going to try first.